The clock on the break room wall showed 11:15 p.m. when Lisa quietly pushed open the heavy door. Her work shift had ended 3 hours ago, but here she was, sneaking back into the building like some kind of thief. The hallways of Clean Pro Industries were dark and empty, with only the soft hum of vending machines breaking the silence. She glanced nervously toward the parking lot where her old Honda sat under a flickering streetlight. Through the windshield, she could see the small outline of her 5-year-old daughter, Mia, curled up in the back seat with a worn blanket. The little girl had fallen asleep during the drive here, exhausted from another long day at her grandmother's house while Lisa worked. Lisa's heart pounded as she made her way to the employee break room. She wasn't supposed to be here. Company policy clearly stated that employees couldn't be in the building after hours without special permission. But what choice did she have? Her washing machine had broken down 2 months ago, and every penny of her paycheck went to rent, groceries, and keeping the lights on. The repair estimate was $400, money she simply didn't have. She had been washing their clothes by hand in her tiny apartment bathroom sink, but it was becoming impossible. The small sink couldn't handle larger items. The clothes never dried properly in the humid bathroom, and Mia was starting to run out of clean school clothes. Desperate times called for desperate measures. Lisa pulled a large garbage bag from her car, careful not to wake Mia. Inside were 2 loads of laundry, mostly Mia's tiny school uniforms, underwear, and the few outfits they both owned. She had been planning this for days, waiting for the right moment when she knew the building would be completely empty. What Lisa didn't know was that she wasn't alone in the building that night. 3 floors up, in what used to be a storage room, Robert Kim was having the worst 2 weeks of his professional life. As the CEO and founder of Clean Pro Industries, he had built the company from nothing into a successful cleaning service with over 200 employees. But lately, something was very wrong. Employee turnover was at an all-time high, productivity was down, and he was getting complaints from clients about inconsistent service. His management team kept giving him reports and numbers, but Robert felt disconnected from what was really happening on the ground. That's when he made a decision that his board of directors thought was crazy. He would go undercover as a regular employee to see what was really going on. For the past 2 weeks, Robert had been working as Bob, a night shift janitor. He wore old clothes, kept his head down, and tried to blend in with the cleaning crew. It was harder than he had expected. The work was physically demanding, the hours were long, and he was getting a first-hand look at how his company really operated, from the bottom up. Tonight, Robert was supposed to be cleaning the 3rd-floor offices, but he had heard a car door slam in the parking lot and seen someone enter the building. Security was his responsibility as CEO, even if nobody knew who he really was right now. He quietly made his way downstairs to investigate. The sound of running water led him toward the break room. Robert pressed himself against the wall and carefully peered around the corner. What he saw made him freeze in place. A young woman stood at the industrial sink, her sleeves rolled up to her elbows, scrubbing a small pink shirt with intense concentration. Her movements were methodical and practiced, like someone who had done this many times before. Next to her on the counter was a pile of children's clothes, tiny jeans, colorful t-shirts, and what looked like school uniforms. Robert recognized her immediately. It was Lisa from the day shift cleaning crew. She was one of the employees who always volunteered for extra hours, never complained about difficult assignments, and somehow maintained perfect attendance despite being a single mother. He had noticed her during his undercover work because other employees spoke highly of her work ethic and kindness. But seeing her here at nearly midnight, washing clothes in the employee break room sink, Robert felt something shift inside his chest. This wasn't just an employee breaking a minor rule. This was a woman doing whatever it took to take care of her child. Lisa worked quietly, wringing out each piece of clothing with care before hanging it on a makeshift clothesline she had, created using paper clips and string stretched between two chairs. Her hands were red from the cold water, and Robert noticed she kept glancing toward the window that faced the parking lot, checking on her daughter. Robert watched as Lisa held up a tiny school uniform, examining it in the fluorescent light to make sure it was clean. She smiled slightly. The first smile he had seen from her in the 2 weeks he had been observing employees. It was a moment of quiet pride in the simple act of caring for her child. That smile hit Robert harder than any quarterly report or management presentation ever had. Here was an employee who worked full-time for his company, who gave her best effort every single day, and she was washing her daughter's clothes in a break room sink at midnight because she couldn't afford to fix her washing machine or pay for the laundromat. Robert carefully backed away from the doorway, his mind racing. How many other employees were struggling like this? How had he become so disconnected from the real lives of the people who made his company successful? He had been so focused on profit margins and growth targets that he had forgotten about the human beings who showed up every day to do the work. As he made his way back upstairs, Robert couldn't shake the image of Lisa's careful, methodical movements as she washed each piece of clothing. There was dignity in her actions, a quiet strength that impressed him more than any executive he had ever worked with. She wasn't complaining or making excuses. She was simply doing what needed to be done to take care of her family. Robert spent the rest of his shift thinking about what he had witnessed. He realized that Lisa's situation probably wasn't unique. If one of his best employees was struggling this much while working full-time, what did that say about the wages and benefits his company provided? What did it say about him as a leader? By the time Lisa finished hanging the last tiny sock on her improvised clothesline, Robert had made a decision. This wasn't just about one employee's broken washing machine. This was about the kind of company he wanted to run and the kind of leader he wanted to be. Lisa carefully packed up her supplies and turned off the lights, leaving the break room exactly as she had found it, except for the small clothes hanging quietly in the dark. She tiptoed back to her car, where Mia was still sleeping peacefully, unaware that her mother had just ensured she would have clean clothes for school tomorrow. As Lisa drove away into the night, Robert stood at the window watching her taillights disappear. Tomorrow, he would continue his undercover investigation, but now he had a different purpose. He wasn't just looking for problems to fix. He was looking for ways to honor the dignity and dedication of employees like Lisa. The break room fell silent again, but the impact of what had happened there would ripple through Clean Pro Industries in ways that no one could have imagined. Sometimes the most important business lessons don't come from boardrooms or consultants. Sometimes they come from watching a mother's quiet determination in an empty break room at midnight and realizing that true leadership means ensuring that hard work and dedication are rewarded with more than just a paycheck. They're rewarded with dignity, respect, and the ability to take care of the people we love. Robert walked back to his janitor's cart, but his mind was already working on plans that would transform not just Lisa's life, but the entire culture of his company. The discovery in the break room had changed everything, and there was no going back to business as usual. The next morning, Robert arrived at work with a new mission. He clocked in as Bob the janitor, just like he had been doing for 2 weeks. But everything felt different now. Yesterday, he had been looking for operational problems and efficiency issues. Today, he was looking at the human faces behind those problems. Lisa arrived for her 7 a.m. shift looking tired but determined. She wore the same cleaning uniform as always, but Robert noticed things he had missed before. Her shoes were worn down at the heels, held together with what looked like super glue. Her uniform was clean and pressed, but he could see it had been mended in several places with careful stitches. She carried herself with quiet dignity, greeting her co-workers with genuine warmth despite whatever struggles she faced at home. During the morning coffee break, Robert positioned himself near a group of employees who were chatting around the vending machines. He had learned that these informal conversations revealed more truth than any employee survey or management report ever could. "Lisa looks exhausted again," said Jenny, one of the office cleaners. "I worry about that girl. She's been working double shifts almost every week for months now." "Can't blame her," replied Carlos, an older man who had been with the company for 5 years. "Rent keeps going up, but our paychecks stay the same. We're all just trying to keep our heads above water." Robert felt a knot forming in his stomach. He pretended to struggle with the coffee machine while listening intently to their conversation. "At least you have Maria to help with your kids after school," Jenny continued. "Lisa doesn't have anyone. I've seen her daughter sleeping in the break room during evening shifts when she can't find a babysitter." This information hit Robert like a physical blow. Employees were bringing their children to work because they couldn't afford childcare. How had he not known about this? More importantly, how had his management team not brought this to his attention? "Company policy says no kids in the workplace," Carlos said quietly, glancing around to make sure no supervisors were listening. "But what's she supposed to do? Leave a 5-year-old home alone? Most of us just look the other way. We understand what it's like." Robert spent his lunch break walking through different departments, really observing his employees for the first time in years. In the supply room, he watched a woman carefully counting out exactly the number of cleaning supplies she needed, making sure not to waste a single item. In the parking lot, he noticed several employees eating lunch in their cars instead of buying food from the cafeteria, probably because they couldn't afford the $5 sandwiches. The picture that emerged over the next few days painted a reality that Robert found deeply troubling. Many of his full-time employees were living paycheck to paycheck. Some worked second jobs on weekends. Others had family members who were sick but couldn't afford proper medical care because the company's health insurance was too expensive for most employees to afford. By Wednesday, Robert had learned Lisa's full story through careful conversations with her co-workers. Her washing machine had broken just as her car needed major repairs. She had chosen to fix the car because she needed it to get to work, which meant hand-washing clothes in her tiny apartment bathroom. When that became impossible, she had started sneaking back into the building to use the industrial sink in the break room. "She's too proud to ask for help," explained Rosa, who worked the evening shift with Lisa. "I offered to lend her money for the washing machine repair, but she won't take it. Says she doesn't want to be a burden on anyone." Robert felt a deep shame washing over him. Here was an employee who embodied everything he claimed to value: hard work, dedication, loyalty, integrity. And his company wasn't providing her with enough to live with basic dignity. While he lived in a comfortable house with every modern convenience, one of his best employees was washing her child's school clothes in a break room sink at midnight. Thursday evening brought another revelation that would haunt Robert for years to come. He was emptying trash cans on the second floor when he heard a child's cough echoing from the break room below. Curious, he made his way downstairs and found Lisa's daughter, Mia, sitting at one of the small tables, working on homework with broken crayons while wearing an adult-sized company sweatshirt that practically swallowed her tiny frame. The little girl couldn't have been more than 5 years old, but she sat quietly and patiently, occasionally looking up to watch her mother work through the glass door that separated the break room from the main cleaning area. She had fashioned the too large sweatshirt into a makeshift dress, rolling up the sleeves multiple times and using a hair tie to cinch the waist. When Lisa came to check on her daughter during a quick break, Robert watched the interaction from around the corner. The love between mother and daughter was obvious and heartwarming, but there was something heartbreaking about seeing a child trying so hard to be good and quiet while her mother worked late into the evening. "How's the homework? Coming, sweetheart?" Lisa asked softly, smoothing down Mia's hair. "Good, Mama. I finished the math problems. Can we go home soon? I'm getting sleepy." "Just a little bit longer, baby. Mama needs to finish cleaning the offices upstairs, and then we'll go home and I'll make you some hot chocolate, okay?" Robert noticed that Lisa didn't promise anything more elaborate. No mention of ordering pizza or stopping for ice cream. Hot chocolate was probably a special treat in their household, the kind of simple pleasure that many families took for granted. As the week progressed, Robert began to see similar stories throughout his company. There was the maintenance worker, who brought lunch in an old margarine container because he couldn't afford the cafeteria prices. The office cleaner who worked through her lunch break so she could leave 30 minutes early to pick up her elderly mother from a medical appointment. The security guard who wore the same worn uniform every day because the company only provided 2 sets per year and he couldn't afford to buy additional ones. Each story added another layer to Robert's growing understanding of how disconnected he had become from the reality his employees faced. While he had been focused on quarterly profits and expansion plans, the people who made his success possible were struggling with basic necessities. Friday afternoon brought the most powerful moment of Robert's undercover investigation. He was cleaning windows in the administrative offices when he overheard a phone conversation that would change everything. Lisa was using the phone in the supervisor's office during her break, thinking she had privacy. "I know the rent is late." "Again, Mrs. Patterson," Lisa was saying, her voice strained but polite. "I get paid next Friday, and I can give you half then and the rest the following week. I promise I'm good for it." "Yes, I understand about the late fees. No, please don't start eviction proceedings. I have a 5-year-old daughter and I just need a little more time." Robert stopped cleaning and listened to Lisa negotiate for more time to pay her rent. She was calm and respectful despite the obvious stress in her voice. When she hung up the phone, she sat quietly for a moment, taking deep breaths before returning to work with the same professional demeanor she always maintained. That evening, Robert sat in his real office after the building had emptied, staring at financial reports that suddenly felt meaningless. His company was profitable. The books showed healthy margins and steady growth. But what good were those numbers if the people who created that success couldn't afford to pay their rent on time? He pulled up Lisa's employment file on his computer. She had been with the company for 3 years. Her performance reviews were consistently excellent. She had never called in sick, never been late, never had a single disciplinary issue. She was exactly the kind of employee any company would want to keep. Yet the salary information in her file told a different story. Even working overtime regularly, Lisa barely earned enough to cover basic living expenses in their city. After taxes, rent, utilities, groceries, and child care for the hours she worked, There was almost nothing left over for emergencies or unexpected expenses like a broken washing machine. Robert realized he was looking at a system that was fundamentally broken. He could continue his undercover investigation for months and find more stories like Lisa's, but he already knew enough. The question wasn't whether his employees were struggling. The question was what he was going to do about it. As he drove home that night to his comfortable house in the suburbs, Robert made a decision that would transform Clean Pro Industries forever. He wasn't just going to fix one employee's washing machine or help one family pay their rent. He was going to rebuild his company's entire approach to how it treated the people who made its success possible. The investigation phase was over. It was time for action. Robert spent the entire weekend at his kitchen table, surrounded by papers that told a story he wished he could unread. Employee salary charts, local cost of living data, rent prices in the neighborhoods where his workers lived, and childcare costs that made his stomach turn. The numbers painted a picture that kept him awake at night. His wife, Catherine, found him there Sunday morning, still in yesterday's clothes, staring at a calculator with the intensity of someone solving a life-or-death puzzle. "Honey, you've been working all weekend. What's got you so focused?" she asked, setting down a cup of coffee next to his scattered papers. Robert looked up at his wife of 15 years, trying to figure out how to explain what he had discovered. "Katie, did you know that our housekeeper probably makes more per hour than some of my full-time employees?" Catherine sat down across from him, concern creasing her features. "What do you mean?" "I mean that woman I told you about, Lisa. She works 40 hours a week for my company, sometimes more, and she can't afford to fix her washing machine. Meanwhile, we pay Maria $60 to clean our house for 3 hours once a week. The math doesn't add up to anything decent." Robert had been running calculations all weekend, and each one made him feel worse about the company he had built. While he had been celebrating profit margins and growth percentages, his employees were choosing between car repairs and washing machines, between rent and groceries, between working and caring for their children. "So, what are you going to do about it?" Catherine asked, the question that had been haunting Robert since Friday night. "I'm going to fix it," he said simply. "All of it. But first, I need to help Lisa right now, today, without making her feel like charity case." Monday morning arrived with Robert feeling like he was carrying a secret that weighed 1,000 pounds. He clocked in as Bob the janitor one more time, but his mind was already working on plans that would change everything. However, before he could transform the entire company, he had one immediate mission. During his lunch break, Robert drove to the neighborhood where Lisa lived. He had gotten her address from the employee files, telling himself this was research for his bigger plans. The apartment complex was older but well-maintained, the kind of place where working families lived when they couldn't afford anything better, but still took pride in their homes. Robert found the building manager, a friendly woman named Helen, who seemed genuinely concerned about her tenants. He introduced himself as someone who worked with Lisa and had heard about her washing machine troubles. "Oh, that poor girl," Helen said immediately. "She's been hand-washing everything for months. I've seen her hanging tiny clothes on her balcony railing. She's too proud to ask for help, but I know she's struggling. She's never late with rent, but I can tell it's a stretch every month." Robert's plan was simple but required careful execution. He told Helen that he wanted to arrange for Lisa's washing machine to be repaired, but it had to seem like a coincidence or a stroke of good luck. Helen's eyes lit up with understanding. "You know what?" Helen said with a knowing smile. "I've been meaning to have all the older appliances in the building checked by a repair service. Maybe they could just happen to fix any problems they find while they're here doing routine maintenance. Robert felt a surge of relief. This could work without damaging Lisa's pride or making her feel like she owed someone a favor she couldn't repay. That afternoon, Robert made several phone calls from his car. First, he contacted the best appliance repair service in the city and arranged for them to visit Lisa's apartment building the next day. He explained the situation carefully, emphasizing that the tenant should never know who paid for the repairs. "Make it seem routine," Robert instructed the repair company owner. "Like the building management is covering the cost as part of regular maintenance. This is very important. She can never know someone else paid for this." The second call was harder. Robert phoned his head of human resources, demanding to see every piece of data about employee wages, benefits, and turnover costs. He didn't reveal his undercover activities yet, but he made it clear that major changes were coming. "I want a complete analysis of our compensation structure compared to local living costs," he told his HR director. "And I want to know exactly how much we're spending on recruiting and training new employees to replace the ones who quit." Tuesday morning brought the moment Robert had been both anticipating and dreading. He positioned himself where he could see the employee parking lot, watching for Lisa's arrival. She pulled up in her old Honda at exactly 6:45 a.m., just like every day, and hurried into the building with her usual quiet efficiency. Around 10 a.m., Robert's phone buzzed with a text from the repair service. "Job complete. Washing machine needed. New pump and control board. Fixed and tested." Tenant was very surprised and grateful. Robert spent the rest of his shift trying to contain his excitement while maintaining his janitor disguise. He wanted so badly to see Lisa's reaction, but he had to be patient. The real test would come that evening when she discovered that her biggest daily stress had suddenly disappeared. At 3 p.m., Robert was emptying trash cans near the employee break room when he overheard Lisa on the phone during her break. Her voice carried a mix of confusion and overwhelming relief. "Mom, you're not going to believe this," she was saying. "I came home for lunch to check on the washing machine repair guy, and he said the building management is having all the old appliances serviced. He fixed everything for free. The washing machine works perfectly now." Robert heard Lisa's voice crack slightly as she continued. "I almost cried right there in front of the repairman. I've been so worried about Mia not having clean clothes for school. This feels like a miracle." The joy in Lisa's voice was worth every penny Robert had spent, but it also reinforced his determination to address the bigger problems. One fixed washing machine wouldn't solve the fundamental issue that his employees were struggling to afford basic necessities while working full-time jobs. That evening, Robert stayed late in his real office, working on plans that would revolutionize Clean Pro Industries. He had the weekend's research spread across his desk: wage analysis, benefit costs, competitor salary data, and most importantly, calculations showing how much the company could afford to invest in its employees while remaining profitable. The numbers were actually encouraging. Robert discovered that the cost of constantly recruiting and training new employees to replace those who quit for better opportunities was enormous. High turnover meant hiring costs, training expenses, productivity losses, and client service problems. Investing in better wages and benefits would actually save money in the long run while improving service quality. Robert also researched on-site child care options, emergency assistance funds, and healthcare plans that would be truly affordable for his employees. Each possibility excited him more than any business expansion he had ever planned. Wednesday brought another small test of Robert's secret assistance plan. He had noticed that several employees were skipping lunch or eating very modest meals, clearly trying to save money. Working with the cafeteria manager, Robert arranged for daily specials that would be offered at drastically reduced prices, subsidized by funds he provided anonymously. Just tell the staff that the company is testing new pricing to boost cafeteria usage, Robert instructed the manager. Make sure the healthiest options are the cheapest ones. By Thursday, Robert noticed more employees eating in the cafeteria instead of skipping lunch or eating in their cars. The simple change seemed to boost energy and morale throughout the afternoon shifts, but the most powerful moment came Thursday evening when Robert was finishing his janitor duties. He saw Lisa in the break room, folding a small load of laundry that she had brought from home. Clean, properly washed clothes that no longer carried the stress of midnight trips to industrial sinks. Mia was with her again, but this time the little girl was wearing her own jacket instead of an oversized company sweatshirt. She looked healthier and happier, chattering excitedly about something that happened at school while her mother folded tiny shirts with obvious satisfaction. Mama, the washing machine sounds funny when it works, Mia was saying. It makes musical noises. That's just the sound of a washing machine that works properly, sweetheart, Lisa replied with a smile that Robert could see even from his position in the hallway. We haven't heard that sound in a long time. Robert realized that his small acts of secret assistance were working, but they were also temporary solutions to permanent problems. It was time to stop hiding behind his janitor disguise and start making changes that would help not just Lisa, but every employee who deserved better from the company they served so faithfully. Friday would be his last day as Bob the janitor. Next week, Robert would reveal everything and begin the transformation that would make CleanPro Industries a company that truly valued the people who made its success possible. Monday morning felt different as Robert walked through the front doors of CleanPro Industries as himself for the first time in 3 weeks. No janitor's uniform, no fake name badge, no need to keep his head down and blend in. Today, he would face his employees as their CEO, armed with knowledge that would change everything. He had spent the weekend preparing for what might be the most important presentation of his business career. Not to investors or board members, but to the people who actually made his company run every single day. His assistant had sent out a company-wide email on Friday announcing a mandatory all-hands meeting for Monday at 2 p.m. Employees were buzzing with speculation about what the big announcement might be. Robert arrived early and positioned himself where he could watch his employees throughout the morning. Lisa clocked in at her usual time, looking more relaxed than he had seen her in weeks. The washing machine repair had clearly lifted a huge burden from her shoulders, but Robert knew that was just the beginning of what needed to change. During the morning break, Robert overheard conversations that reminded him why this meeting was so crucial. Carlos was telling another worker about his son needing glasses but having to wait until next payday. Jenny mentioned that her car was making strange noises, but she couldn't afford to take it to a mechanic. These were the everyday struggles of people who worked hard and deserved so much better. At 1:45 p.m., employees began filing into the main conference room. Robert had specifically chosen this space because it was where they held employee training sessions, making it feel less formal and intimidating than the executive boardroom. He wanted this to feel like a conversation, not a corporate announcement. The room filled quickly with curious faces. Robert could see the mix of emotions. Some people looked worried, wondering if bad news was coming. Others seemed excited, hoping for positive changes. Lisa sat toward the middle of the room with several co-workers she had become friends with over her 3 years at the company. Robert took the stage with a simple presentation setup. No fancy corporate slides, just a few key points he wanted to share. He began by asking everyone to get comfortable, explaining that what he was about to tell them might come as a surprise. "For the past 3 weeks," Robert began, "I've been working alongside many of you as Bob, the night shift janitor." The room erupted in surprised murmurs and shocked expressions. Robert could see people turning to each other, trying to process what they had just heard. Lisa's hand flew to her mouth in obvious recognition and embarrassment. "I want you to know that this wasn't about spying on anyone or trying to catch people doing something wrong," Robert continued quickly, raising his hand to quiet the room. "This was about me trying to understand how our company really works from your perspective, and what I discovered changed everything I thought I knew about leadership." Robert spent the next 10 minutes sharing what he had learned during his undercover experience, carefully avoiding specific names, but describing situations that many employees recognized. He talked about the dedication he had witnessed, the challenges people faced, and the dignity with which his employees handled difficult circumstances. "I saw a single mother washing her child's clothes in our break room sink at midnight because her washing machine was broken and she couldn't afford to fix it," Robert said, his voice carrying genuine emotion. "I watched parents bring their children to work because they couldn't afford evening childcare. I listened to conversations about choosing between car repairs and groceries, between rent and medical bills." The room was completely silent now. Some employees wiped away tears as they recognized their own struggles in Robert's words. Others sat with expressions of hope mixed with disbelief, wondering if their CEO was actually going to do something about these problems. "What I realized," Robert continued, "is that we've been celebrating our company's success while the people who create that success every day have been struggling just to get by. That ends today." Robert then unveiled the comprehensive changes he had been planning all weekend. First, every hourly employee would receive an immediate 25% wage increase, effective with the next paycheck. The room filled with gasps and excited whispers as people quickly calculated what this would mean for their families. But Robert wasn't finished. He announced that the company would begin offering truly affordable health insurance with the company, covering 75% of the premium costs. For many employees, this would be the first time they could afford proper medical care for their families. "We're also going to build an on-site child care center," Robert continued, gesturing toward architectural plans displayed on screens around the room. "It will be available to all employees at cost, which means about half of what you're probably paying now for child care. Construction starts next month, and we'll have temporary child care arrangements in place within 2 weeks." Lisa was crying, openly now, along with several other parents in the room. The child care announcement alone would transform their daily lives, eliminating the stress of finding affordable, reliable care for their children. Robert then announced the creation of an Employee Emergency Assistance Fund, a pool of money available for employees facing unexpected financial crises like major car repairs, medical bills, or broken appliances. Employees could apply for interest-free loans or, in some cases, grants that didn't need to be repaid. "And finally," Robert said, "we're establishing clear career advancement paths with paid training programs. Every employee will have the opportunity to develop new skills and move into higher-paying positions within our company." The room erupted in applause, but Robert raised his hand for silence. He had one more thing to say, and it was the most important part of his entire presentation. "I want to personally apologize to each of you," he said, his voice carrying the weight of genuine regret. As your CEO, it was my responsibility to ensure that working hard for this company meant being able to live with dignity and take care of your families. I failed at that responsibility, and I'm sorry." Robert's apology seemed to break down the last barriers between management and employees. People were crying, hugging each other, and talking excitedly about what these changes would mean for their lives. After the formal presentation ended, Robert made his way through the crowd, shaking hands and talking with individual employees. When he reached Lisa, she looked embarrassed and grateful at the same time. "Mr. Kim, I'm so sorry you had to see me washing clothes in the break room," she said quietly. "I never meant to break company policy." "Lisa," Robert replied firmly, "you have nothing to apologize for. You were taking care of your daughter the best way you knew how. I'm the one who should be apologizing to you for creating a situation where that was necessary." Robert then made Lisa an offer that surprised everyone around them. Based on the leadership qualities he had observed during his undercover investigation, he wanted to promote her to shift supervisor with immediate management training. The position came with a substantial salary increase and the opportunity to help implement all the new programs he had announced. "You've been leading by example for years," Robert explained. "Now I want to give you the official title and compensation that matches what you've already been doing." Over the following months, Clean Pro Industries transformed into a completely different kind of company. The wage increases meant that employees could afford basic necessities without working multiple jobs or choosing between essentials. The child care center became a source of pride for the entire company, with employees' children playing safely while their parents worked nearby. The Emergency Assistance Fund helped dozens of families through unexpected crises: car repairs, medical, bills, and yes, washing machine repairs that no longer required midnight trips to break room sinks. Employee turnover dropped to nearly zero, and productivity increased as workers felt valued and secure. Lisa thrived in her new management role, using her understanding of employee struggles to help implement programs that made real differences in people's lives. Her daughter Mia became one of the first children enrolled in the company child care center, where she flourished under professional care while staying close to her mother. The story of Clean Pro Industries began spreading throughout the business community, inspiring other companies to examine their own practices. Robert was invited to speak at conferences about the business benefits of treating employees with dignity and respect, but he always emphasized that it wasn't just good business, it was the right thing to do. 6 months after that Monday afternoon meeting, Robert often walked through his company and smiled at what he saw. Employees who looked forward to coming to work, families who could afford to live with dignity, and a workplace culture built on mutual respect rather than just profit margins. The most rewarding moment came when he saw Lisa dropping off Mia at the company child care center one morning. Both mother and daughter were laughing about something, and Lisa's face showed a peace and confidence that hadn't been there during those midnight washing sessions in the break room. Sometimes the most important lessons in leadership come from the most unexpected places. For Robert, that place was watching a mother's quiet determination at midnight and realizing that true success meant ensuring that everyone who contributed to the company's achievements could share in its prosperity.